What's up, ladies and gentlemen? In this video, I want to talk about Jon Snow and which weapon he will use when he finally faces off against the Night King and his army. As we all know, the Night King has been the most dangerous threat to humanity in this world. Ever since Season 1, Episode 1, we have been aware of this threat beyond the wall. And now that the series is getting closer and closer to its end, I think most of us feel that this wall will come down, leaving Westeros completely vulnerable against a devastating attack from the Night King. Luckily for Westeros, Jon Snow is well aware of this threat, and I believe he will do everything in his power to stop it. We know what we need to kill the Whites, and we also know what we need to kill the White Walkers, but we can't guarantee what can kill the Night King. Considering he is the most powerful of the others, it's probably going to take some pretty magical shit to stop him. It's just a matter of time before the humans face off against the others. And I am confident Jon Snow can lead this attack, with the help of Daenerys and her dragons. But if there ever comes a time to where someone has to face the Night King himself, I think that person would be Jon Snow. Ever since they had that epic stare down at Hardhome, I've always felt that these two would meet again, on the battlefield. And if this is the case, will Jon's sword be enough to stop the Night King? Jon Snow currently carries a Valyrian steel sword Longclaw, which was the ancestral weapon of House Mormont for over 5 centuries. Most of you know this was the sword that Jeor Mormont gave to his son Jorah Mormont when he decided to take the Black and join the Night's Watch. But Jorah Mormont fucked up after he tried to sell poachers into slavery to make some extra cash for his lady. Ned Stark was set to execute Jorah Mormont, but Jorah went into exile. But before he hightailed it out of Westeros, he did leave the sword behind. That's when Jeor's sister returned the sword to the wall. If you fast forward some time later, Jon Snow joins the Night's Watch. Then Lord Commander Mormont gets attacked in his chambers by a White, in which Jon Snow saved his life by burning that White. But what they don't tell us in the show is, when Jon Snow set fire to the White, it actually caused a fire that damaged Longclaw. Since it's made of Valyrian steel, it didn't do too much to the blade, but it actually burnt the original hilt that had a bear on it. That's when Lord Commander Mormont decided that since it needed to be fixed anyway, he might as well stick a wolf's head on the hilt, then gift the sword to Jon Snow for saving his life. And this is the sword that Jon has been carrying ever since. It's actually the only sword to ever kill a White Walker. We've seen Sam and Mira kill a White Walker, but that was with Dragon Glass. So as of right now, Jon has the only sword thus far to stop a White Walker. But there are other Valyrian steel swords in this story. Plus there is another magical sword out there that we have seen before at the Tower of Joy. Does anyone think Jon will keep Longclaw at his side for the duration of this series? Or will he end up using something else when the White Walkers come marching and sweeping through Westeros? One of the most popular theories out there is that Jon Snow is Azor Ahai reborn. Azor Ahai was a legendary hero who wielded a burning sword called Lightbringer. Could Jon be the reincarnation of this legendary figure who was chosen once before when the darkness laid over the world? It is said that this will occur after a long summer, when an evil and cold darkness descends upon the world. This is when Azor Ahai will stand against the others with Lightbringer once again. If Jon Snow ends up being this hero, will Longclaw be his Lightbringer? The story of Lightbringer is shrouded in mystery as well. When Azor Ahai needed to forge a sword to fight this darkness, it was said that he labored for 30 days and 30 nights until it was done. But when he went to temper it in water, the sword broke. The second time he spent 50 days and 50 nights to make the sword, even better than the first time. Then he captured a lion and drove the sword into its heart, but once again the steel shattered. Then finally he worked for 100 days and 100 nights, busting his ass trying to make this sword. This time he called for his wife, Nissa, and he asked her to bare her breast. He then drove the sword into her living heart, her soul combining with the steel of the sword, creating Lightbringer, the Red Sword of Heroes. If Jon Snow is Azor Ahai reborn, and he needs to forge a new sword to go against the others, will he need to do the same thing in order to create it? When it says Lightbringer was first tempered in water, could that mean a Greyjoy? Then when it was plunged into a lion's heart, does that mean a Lannister? Would Jon Snow need to do these things as well? Who will be his Nissa if this were to come true? Personally, I do not think Longclaw will be Jon's sword in the end. I love Longclaw, it's one of my favorite looking swords in the show, but it is a bastard sword. which makes perfect sense why Jon would end up with that sword. But I think there will come a time when we find out Jon Snow is not a bastard, but instead a legitimate Targaryen. And in that case, Jon will no longer be carrying a bastard sword. I would not be surprised to see Jon give Longclaw back to the Mormonts. Whether that be back to Jorah or given to Lyanna, that is up for debate. Lyanna does deserve to have the sword back in her family for all that she has done. But perhaps when Jorah comes back into the fold and he goes up north with Jon, maybe Jorah does something that makes Jon want to return it to the family. Jorah could potentially save Jon's life at some point. And I know there are people out there who think Jon will end up with Heartsbane, which was the Valyrian steel sword that Samwell Tarly took from his father when he left for the Citadel. Heartsbane is the ancestral Valyrian steel sword of House Tarly. The Tarlys have had this sword in their family for over 500 years as well, and I've heard some people refer to the name Heartsbane as a metaphor for Lightbringer, the sword that ends up piercing the heart of a Nissa-like person. We know Sam now has this sword with him, and we also know from spoilers that at some point Sam will make his way back to Winterfell next season. If Jon knows Sam has this sword just laying around, Jon could end up with this sword if he does in fact give Longclaw back to the Mormonts. Now I've seen people say Longclaw already has a wolf on its hilt though, but that doesn't mean anything because that hilt can easily be changed once again. There is another Valyrian steel sword up north as well, which is Oathkeeper, the Valyrian steel sword that Brienne has been carrying around that was given to her by Jaime Lannister. Oathkeeper was once the Stark's ancestral sword Ice, that Tywin Lannister had melted down and reforged into 2 new Valyrian steel swords for Jaime and Joffrey. Wouldn't it be kind of poetic if Jon Snow ended up with one of these swords that was once in his family for hundreds of years? I wouldn't be surprised to see that steel end up in the hands of the Starks once again. But there is another sword that came into play at the same time we learned that Jon Snow had Targaryen in his blood, and that sword is Dawn. Dawn is the ancestral sword of House Dayne. This was the sword Sir Arthur Dayne was carrying when he was left to guard the Tower of Joy, in which Lyanna Stark was inside giving birth to Rhaegar Targaryen's son, Jon Snow. In the Song of Ice and Fire novels, Dawn was forged from the metal of a fallen star, most likely some kind of meteorite. Its blade is said to be as pale as milk glass, which is also said to be just as sharp as Valyrian steel. Now I think it's interesting that the blade is said to be as pale as milk glass. Could that be in reference to another type of dragon glass, but something even more powerful or magical? There are numerous people in this community that think this sword could be down in Winterfell's crypts, just waiting for Jon Snow to find it and wield it. The story says that Ned Stark returned it to House Dayne, but we do not know if the television show will take this same route, nor do we know if Ned actually did return the sword. This would also be another poetic ending, if Jon Snow ended up using this sword to fight the others, the same sword that was used to protect him and his mother at the Tower of Joy. If this sword is in fact made out of something from a meteorite, it does sound like it could be magical enough to defeat the Night King. But what does everyone else think about these possibilities? I wanted to make this video because I'm very curious to see what this section of the community thinks about Jon Snow using another sword when it comes time to fight against the Night King and his army. Comment below and give me your opinion on this. Do you think Jon will continue to use Longclaw for the remainder of the series? Or do you think he will end up with Heartsbane, or Dawn, or one of the swords that was once the Stark's ancestral family sword, Ice? Let me know what you think down below. Before I go, I want to thank everyone that has shown their support on Patreon. I will be releasing a video over there within the next few days. Thank you Daughter of Ice and Fire, Bran the Builder, Cal's Fookin Chickens, Nick Innella, Gene USMC, Sir Thomas, Indycar Podcast, Cypher, Schuyler, James Mellar, A Dawn of Ice and Fire, Karri Neves, Maureen, and the Theon Defense Squad. Thank you all so much. I will see you down in the comment section. Bye.